David, it is good to see you. Thank you very much for coming here.
My pleasure.
It's good. It's baseball off season, so this is a time you've got some free time.
Baseball is never off season, but yes.
You said the other day that you thought that the business community, and I think this was partially from some of your maybe meetings here, was it that they are going to get a better shake, rightly or wrongly, from this administration than they did from the last one. Are they right or are they wrongly?
I didn't use the phrase better shake, but maybe something like that. But maybe somebody misquoted me. I would say that the business community feels that they will probably get a better hearing than they got under the previous administration. Rightly or wrongly, that's their perception.
You interviewed Donald Trump for your most recent book,
Right.
which is a book about presidents. What did you learn about him that surprised you?
Well, I was interviewing right before the trial. He can compartmentalize very well. He was about to go on trial that afternoon, and he gave me an interview. So he compartmentalized it very well, because I would have not been doing an interview at that time. Look, he's a different person than he was before. I interviewed him before he ran for president of the United States. In the green room, he said to me, "David, ask me any question you want, but ask me if I'm going to run for president." And I said, "President what?" He said, "President of the United States." I said, "Donald, you're not going to be president of the United States." He said, "Well, you never know." So at that time, I don't think he really thought he was going to be president. He was interested in it, but I thought, he felt probably it's a bit of a long shot. He had 17 other people he was running against. This time, I think he felt he was going to win almost from the beginning. Despite all the aggravations he felt and all the legal problems, I think he thought he was going to win. He's a different person in the sense that he's much more experienced. When he went in last time, he had no experience in federal government. Nobody had ever been president of the United States with no experience in federal government. Nobody. He came in with no experience, and therefore he relied on a lot of people that he didn't really know. He didn't think they were completely loyal. Now he's used loyalty as a test. He's got his people. He knows what he wants to do, and I think he's going to move pretty quickly.
I'm curious, from an economic standpoint, how would you judge the Biden presidency?
Well, if you eliminate the politics of it and you just looked at the numbers, he created more jobs, or more jobs were created in his 4 years than virtually any other president in a 4-year period. Now, some of it was the rebound from COVID, of course. Secondly, inflation was not good, for sure. They missed it. They called it transitory in the beginning. But in the end, they got inflation down to a tolerable level, roughly 3%. The unemployment level is very, very low. And, if you say, look, the unemployment level's low, GDP growth was pretty good. On the whole, his numbers were pretty good. Much better when I worked in the White House for Jimmy Carter. Our numbers weren't as good, and we were criticized. We lost as well. I think Biden's numbers are much better than he got credit for, in my view.
Are you surprised, to go back to the beginning, are you surprised that the business community is so excited that Biden is out, given what you said, that the numbers were good?
Well, those numbers are macroeconomic numbers. The getting deals approved through the FTC and the Justice Department weren't so wonderful. Getting your cryptocurrency approved through the SEC wasn't exactly an easy thing to do. So in the business community, I think, felt that President Biden went in and he campaigned as a moderate, but then he had more leftist people running some of those agencies, and I think they were disappointed. So I think on a micro level, they were not happy, and I think they feel they'll get a better hearing, let's say, in this administration, rightly or wrongly.
You obviously co-founded and chair Carlyle Group. Private equity for the last couple of years, there has been a dearth of exits in the industry as a whole. Lots of limited partners and funds basically keep saying, "Where's my money?" And the response from a lot of partners and heads of private equity firms is to basically blame the Biden administration on the antitrust side.
I never blame them. I don't blame the Biden administration.
Then where that's fair. Why have we seen relatively few exits out of private equity? It's true of venture too.
I don't think it was just because the regulators are the problems. I think there were inflation was very, very high, and so that was a problem for people. Interest rates were high. That was a problem as well. So high interest rates and high inflation is not a good prescription for an IPO. And also remember, we have fewer companies that are public than we did, let's say, in 1997. We have half as many. So taking an IPO isn't the end all of business anymore. It used to be, but now you have a company like Stripe. They're happy never to go public.
They are. I mean, why? When Carlyle speaks to its limited partners to say, why has the exit pace gone down? Not just for you, but for your peers. The public markets. I appreciate what you said about inflation, but the public markets have been fairly good. And if on the acquisition side, private equity still mostly sells to other private equity, and even that slowed down. And there's almost never an antitrust problem or a regulatory problem.
Right. Well, private equity still, for all these years, like Biden years, outperformed most other asset classes for most of those years. Not every asset class outperformed the public markets. Public markets were pretty good the last couple of years. I should have mentioned that as well. The last year or so, the public markets are up 20-some%. That's not bad. So on the whole, Biden's economy wasn't so terrible. The private equity markets are have been a little bit challenged for sure, but investors aren't going away. They're not going away. I think one of the excitements that private equity people have now is that there's a big sea change going on in the investor base. It used to be the investors were banks and and insurance companies, high net worth people. Then it became state pension funds. Then it became sovereign wealth funds. Then it became family offices. But now the holy grail is going to be the 401k market. There's about $14 trillion there. And the U.S. government's policy is if you went to Harvard or an equivalent school and you majored in economics and you're first in your class, but you went for Teach for America, and you're there and you make no money, but you're not a qualified investor because you don't have a big income. So you can't get some of your 401k to go into a private equity fund. If you're an idiot, your father gave you $100 million and you don't know what you're doing, you can put all your money in private equity, nobody cares.
Because you can afford to lose your money back.
Right. But the U.S. government policy has been to not let people who should get higher rates of return and need them, the Teach for America example, they're not letting them put even 5% of their 401k into a private equity vehicle. And I think that's going to change in this administration.
When you think that's going to change, do you think it's going to become a true free-for-all? Anyone's going to be able to put a certain percentage of their net worth into private equities?
Well, I can't speak for the regulators, but I would say I wouldn't be.
Well, if you were to design it, and I know I appreciate you're at Carlyle, you'd say 100%. But
no, I wouldn't say that. I would say I don't think anybody. Well, first of all, as Mark Rowan has pointed out, and I think it's a good point. Right now, people buying public index funds, they got 35% of the S&P 500 is in 7 companies, more or less. Yes. So why be so tied up in 7 companies? Why not let 5% or 10% of your IRA or 401k go into a illiquid fund, which has some valuations put to it, just not daily liquidity?
One of the things we're about to get a major DC tax conversation. It's coming again in terms of corporate taxes, personal tax, et cetera. When this happened back in 2017, carried interest tax, which is tax obviously that's near and dear to the heart of private equity, was part of that conversation. And ultimately, the treatment wasn't changed. Could you foresee?
It was changed. It went from 2 years to 3 years.
2 years, but the basic theory of the basic argument, it should be treated as ordinary income. The big money was not changed.
Yeah, President Trump,
but Trump wanted to do it back then.
Trump was not in favor of carried interest taxation, and it was pushback from Capitol Hill that went from 2 years to 3 years. Who knows where that's going to be? I don't get carried interest. So I got tired of responding to that question. So I just structure my affairs so I have no carried interest.
Wait, you have no carried interest in Carlyle funds?
No. All I have is my stock, my dividends, and my personal investments in the funds. The carried interest goes to people working on the deals right now, and I'm not doing that.
So do you have no opinion on what should happen with it?
I have opinions. That doesn't, just because I don't get any doesn't mean I have opinions. I think it's not the end of the earth. It's not the biggest tax issue of all time. There are much more significant tax issues, but it'll get much more attention than I think it deserves. But
could private equity as an industry, the way it's currently structured, the way Carlyle is and other firms,
right,
could it survive and persist if carried interest was treated as ordinary income?
Well, I think nothing is going to stop private equity from existing, I think. But clearly, you're going to attract more people, and to some extent, than you might have otherwise. But I don't want to say the industry will fall apart. I think the industry is better off with it, but I don't get any of it. I don't really care. It's not my main issue. I do think that people that want to change the carried interest rules are going to have a tough time getting it through the Senate.
A lot of the conversation here in Davos and on this stage has revolved around AI.
Right.
Private equity has always been known as this apprenticeship business. You know, often you bring in people young as analysts and they work their way up, they learn things. I asked a similar question earlier.
That's true of
today.
most businesses.
It is true of most businesses. When you think of Carlyle, do you see AI at some point starting to replace some of those lower levels? And will there not be people to promote to managing director, managing partners?
I worry less about the lower level than the senior levels are being replaced. But no, look, AI is going to help people make the core decision you have to make in the private equity world. Do this deal, not do this deal. So we have a relationship with OpenAI, and we work in a system where you use the data that you get through artificial intelligence to help you make the decision. And we've been doing that already. And it's like take our fund of funds business. If you're going to do a fund of funds portfolio, let's suppose you're going to buy $500 million of secondaries, you have to go through all those portfolios in that thing. It takes months to do that. With AI, you can do it relatively quickly. And so I think AI is going to change the investment business of private equity by enabling people to make quicker decisions for sure, and hopefully better decisions.
Bill Ford of General Atlantic had over down at Lighthouse earlier today, and he talked about how they now have an actual AI on their investment committee. Not a vote, but it gets to basically tell them if it thinks their vote is wrong by going through all their old investments and things that worked, things that didn't. Do you foresee a point of view, it's a time, I guess, where a computer or an AI really gets a vote on what Carlyle deals it actually does and doesn't do?
Well, Will it have the controlling vote? Probably not. But it will have some influence for sure. But, people have their own opinions, and it's hard to, somebody has a view that there's a great deal to do, and he or she knows this business very well. Artificial intelligence might suggest something different, but people rely on their gut. For example, I don't think Warren Buffett is going to rely on AI to make decisions. And, he relies on his gut, and he's got a pretty good gut. So a lot of great investors rely on their own backgrounds. I did a book on great investors, and most of them are probably not focused on the kind of things that AI helps you with, though I'm not sure that the average investor wouldn't be benefited from it.
Do you use AI at all in your personal life?
I am the last adopter. I'm still using my BlackBerry, so I am not. I'm not usually the person at the cutting edge of technology.
It's interesting. You talked about how you still think investors are going to use their gut. And what I hear sometimes from private equity folks is, yes, AI is going to be able to help with the modeling and with a lot of the research. But in the end, I still need to sit down with the management company or the CEO.
Well, you have to do that, sure.
And this is a kind of just a crystal ball question, do you think the AI will get to the point where its EQ is as good as its IQ?
Okay. If we had this conversation 4 years ago, you wouldn't be asking about AI, or 3 years ago, or even maybe 2 years ago. So the result is it's moved so quickly that it's now a major discussion. So who can predict 5 years from now? The world may change dramatically. So I wouldn't say nothing will happen in the future that is, different than what you say. I just don't know. We just don't know enough how AI is going to develop. AI is really embryonic. It's in the first inning of its development, honestly.
I asked Sridhar, CEO of Snowflake, something. I want to ask you something similar. You recently bought the Baltimore Orioles.
I did.
You have had a very long career doing a lot of things, but you have never owned a professional baseball team, a Major League Baseball team. What have you learned about baseball and pro sports that you didn't know before you signed the papers?
When I was in the Little League, it was a little different. They didn't have all the sabermetrics they now use, and it's much more complicated. And so relying on a manager and a general manager who spent their whole life in baseball is probably a better thing than saying, hey, I've been in private equity for 30 years, and now I want to tell you how to do a baseball team.
Do you have urges, though, sometimes to go, no, not that guy. Why is he batting third?
They let me know what they think, and I tell them my views, but my views are not that relevant because I don't know much about baseball. They have these statistics that I never heard of before. I mean, when I was paying attention to baseball, they had things called a complete game. That's when you pitch 9 innings. Now they have a thing.
Those.
Remember that? Now they have quality starts. Just doing well. It's like a little league term. Quality starts. I never heard of that, but now that's a statistic. They have all these statistics I didn't know about.
Do you give your pitchers a trophy when they do a quality start?
Everybody gets a trophy in Little League, and I guess everybody gets a quality start trophy too, probably.
There is one interesting tech question in baseball. It's arguably an AI question, and they've started this in the minor leagues, basically having robots or computers judge balls and strikes.
Yes.
Do you think that eventually will come to the major leagues, and are you in favor of that, if it works?
The Major League Baseball, MLB, just signed a contract with Major League umpires, so I don't think I should comment on something that we just did a contract on which didn't deal with that directly. There is the ability to do that in the minor leagues, and we'll see how it works, and it's too early to say.
That's fair. Let me ask one other baseball question. It feels, and I'm not an Orioles fan, I'm a Red Sox fan, so we compete.
Why?
Because I like looking up at things, and every other team is above us at the moment. Same reason you're owning the Orioles and not the Nationals. You grew up in Baltimore. I grew up in
You've
Boston.
already won 4 World Series in the last X number of years. We haven't won. So give us a chance. We want a chance to win a World Series.
Oh, you haven't watched. The Red Sox are giving you a chance. We're not signing players. As a piece of that, every free agent, it seems, has been signed by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the last couple of weeks, literally all of them from all countries, including Japan. Do you, and this is a big picture question, not that specifically about the Dodgers,
right.
But do you think baseball is the only major sport without a salary cap? I know owners generally are in favor of it. Does baseball have a fundamental problem that so many fans go into a season, not because of what their team did or didn't do in the offseason, but just knowing, because my team is X, my team will not win when this is all over? I
don't think that's the case. I mean, lots of times teams win that, or people don't expect them to win. Nobody expected, like the Dodgers won last year, but before that, the team that won, the Rangers, they weren't expected to win. So you never know. Clearly, there's no salary cap, and the NHL has one, NBA has one, NFL has one. At some point, there may be one in Major League Baseball. I think a salary cap and a nationwide TV contract would be a good thing.
You have basically 3 careers right now. You have Carlyle, you have the Orioles, and you also do my job, which AI hasn't replaced me yet, but you're trying to. You have this Bloomberg interview show.
Yes.
Why do you do that?
Well, I enjoy it, and when I enjoy it. So that's one thing. Secondly, when you get to a certain age, you want to keep your brain sharp. So, as you know, you rely on other people to help you keep your brain sharp. You can do it by learning a musical instrument, crossword puzzles, foreign language. Well, I do it by interviewing people, and there's a Yiddish word called yenta. And yenta means you want to know everything. And when I was a little boy, my mother said, "Don't be a yenta and ask everybody all these questions." So now I have an outlet. I can ask people questions, and people think it's okay.
Of the people you've interviewed for Bloomberg on your Bloomberg TV show, what's been your favorite interview and why?
When I did Jeff Bezos, it was in front of a live audience, and doing an interview in front of a live audience is great because when you do it in front of a live audience, you can get feedback right away. If you do it in a studio, you don't get the feedback. So when in a studio, one time I asked Bill Gates just in his office, Bill, if you had actually gotten a college degree, you think you could have been more successful? And he didn't get the joke, and he started to kind of give me a serious answer. When I asked that question in front of a live audience and they laughed, then he realized it was a joke. So it helps. When I did Jeff Bezos, I had 2,000 people or 3,000 people in it, and he has a really good sense of humor. He played along with my.
He has a unique laugh as well.
It is unique. His sisters hated it, but it is unique. I don't know if I could replicate that, but it is unique.
All right, we started this talking about presidents, so I just want to go back quickly about two of them. The first is not one people are going to expect, which is Grover Cleveland, because you're right. Trump is the first president to become president again with a gap in
That's
between
correct.
since Cleveland. And you said recently that from your perspective, Cleveland had a more success. I think you said this more successful second term than first term. Do you see any parallels there, and why was his second term?
Let me explain. When you have a second term, I know from I worked in the White House for 4 years, and I was very young, and I was really tired. If we won, I don't know if I had the energy to do another 4 years. You get very tired. Presidents get tired, and they're older than staff people like me. So when you're tired, you make mistakes. The second term of Richard Nixon, he won 49 states, second term out of office. Ronald Reagan had Iran-Contra almost out of office. And then Bill Clinton had his personal problems and was impeached. So second terms don't necessarily they're going to be successful. It may be you get tired doing this for 8 years in a row. If you're out of office for 4 years, you can think about the mistakes you made, think about what you want to do right, and get a fresh team of people coming in that you think are loyal to you. It might be that a second term could be better than a non-consecutive second term could be better than a second term that is consecutive.
Final question for you. You've mentioned a couple times that you did work in the Carter administration long before you got into private equity. Obviously, former President Carter died recently. Give me a good Jimmy Carter anecdote from your time in the White House.
Well, when I wanted to play tennis, I had to send him a memo. The White House tennis courts, he didn't want people using them when he might want to use them. So he would basically say, "You want to use a court? Send me a memo." So you have to send a memo to the President of the United States asking permission to use the tennis court. So, a couple times I'd send memos in, and sometimes they came back and said no. So
I don't think anyone's going to have to ask Trump if they can use the tennis courts. I think that's going to be all right.
The answer will be no.
David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Right, bye.